Bob Wischusen is the voice of the Jets, play-by-play voice of the Jets. We are the home of the New York Jets here on 104.5 The Team, ESPN Radio in Albany. And we hear Bob and his calls each and every week with the Jets. And we welcome him to our show this morning on Big Board Sports. Bob, Rodger, and Chris Honorado in Albany. Good morning.
Hey, guys. How are you?
We're good, Bob. Thanks for a few minutes. I know it's early, OTAs, and teams are trying to figure out, what they're doing. And certainly with the Jets, it's all about what they're doing at quarterback. So let's start right there with the lead. Where do you stand, and do you think the Jets stand with the three options right now that the Jets would have as the starting quarterback?
I think they legitimately have no idea because all these guys are new to this. It's a brand new quarterback coach, a brand new offensive coordinator. You got a new guy in Josh McCown. It's a new system. And all they've done is throw the ball in shorts and T-shirts right now. So, obviously, if you had to handicap it right now, you'd probably say Josh McCown to start the season just because he's a professional quarterback. He's done this before, but you're going to see Christian Hackenberg. And obviously you're going to see him at some point, whether it's, immediately or I would say at the latest relatively early in the season, because what's the point of this season if not to let him play? So sooner or later that will happen. I would think sooner rather than later. But in terms of opening day right now, I have no idea who's going to start a quarterback. I don't think they do either.
Yeah, I agree with that. And until you put on the pads, until you play some games, some preseason games, and throw Hackenberg out there and see what he can do. Is it fair to say, Bob, that Hackenberg has improved, though, that from where he was at last year at this standpoint to now, that the Jets have seen improvement in him?
They say they have, but for all of us, that's just a rumor. You're not allowed at practice during the season, and he was part of, at one point in the season, a 4-quarterback rotation. For the better part of the year, a 3-quarterback rotation, and he was third. So what they saw him do in practice last year, that's just it's up to us to just trust what they tell us, because obviously none of us saw it. I saw him in preseason and training camp last year, and he was in the deep end of the pool. He had no idea what was going on and didn't look confident. He definitely, I was at mini camp practice a couple days ago. He certainly looks more confident than he did over a year ago, but how could he not? He was the third quarterback and was barely getting any reps. So, again, who's going to start the season? I guess if you had to handicap it right now, it'll be McCown. But this is what I think they want. They want Hackenberg to go win the job. And I think if you asked the brain trust, if you certainly asked the general manager that drafted him, he wants the coach right now to say the veteran is the number one on the depth chart, but we're going to go into training camp with a competition. And hopefully, competition drives performance, and Christian Hackenberg goes out there and performs and wins the job. Doesn't get handed the job. He's not a first-round draft choice. He's not a top-of-the-first-round quarterback where you're just gifted the job because of where you were drafted. You're drafted in the second round. They may be picking a quarterback in next year's draft. That might be the design all along. So if you really want to flip the script and prove everybody wrong, you go win the job. And I think that's what they would want to see.
Bob, Chris Honorado here with Rodger as well. Look, nobody wants to cover a team that loses a lot. Certainly nobody wants to do play-by-play for a team that loses a lot. Nobody wants to play on a team that loses a lot of games. But should the Jets, whether they admit it or not, be out to lose as many as 15 games this season, because no one wants to go 0-16, to position themselves best for the future?
Well, obviously the word tank has come up, and I get it, but tanking is losing on purpose. They're not going to lose on purpose. They drafted 2 rookies who they think are going to be great players at safety. On opening day, they will be on the field. They've got 3 defensive linemen that all have a lot of ability. Mo Wilkerson last year had a lousy season. This year I think he'll be motivated to have a better season, but he and Sheldon Richardson and Leonard Williams, on opening day, they will be on the field. So they're going to put their best players on the field, and the players and coaches are trying to win. But having said that, I do think that, what can be mistaken for tanking, which is the front office trying to set them up for failure, is more of an honest appraisal of them sitting there and saying around that conference table behind closed doors, what are we right now? Where are we as an organization? Are we beating the Patriots this year? No. So what could we do other than throw good money after bad by spending cap space, signing free agents? What are we doing? If we do that, then how are we helping ourselves for when we actually have a chance, if we restock this team with some drafts, to go fight for it 2 or 3 years down the road, and then we'll have our cap space to spend. And we'll sign some guys to some long-term contracts at that point. But to go out and make a play for Jay Cutler this past season, or to keep Eric Decker and David Harris on the team and be, not able to carry their cap space over to next year and so on and so forth. Well, what's the point of that? So I think they're basically looking at this as we have an honest appraisal of where we're at. We're going to put the best young building block players that we think are going to be here for the future on the field this year and ask them to go play their butts off and try and win. But if they go 2-14, having the top pick in the draft and getting Sam Darnold on their team potentially is not the worst outcome as well. So, I think it's twofold. I definitely think that the front office is looking at the big picture and is looking at what mechanism they have with which to get a quarterback. But this is also a front office that drafted Christian Hackenberg and wants him to succeed, and they're never going to tell these coaches and players to go out there and try and lose. I mean, they're going to play their best players. If on opening day, all of the guys that should be at the top of the depth chart are all on the bench and you're watching practice squad players play, well, then obviously then they're trying to lose. You're not going to see that. The best guys on the roster will be on the field playing. So, big picture, maybe they are best off, having a horrible season and being able to draft one of those quarterbacks at the top of the draft next year. And that very well may be. But you're not going to see that for the team.
Bob, big picture, is Todd Bowles a part of the big picture?
I don't know. Woody Johnson has not come out and said Todd Bowles is getting a contract extension. He's here for the next 3 or 4 years, and he obviously has bought in on this rebuilding project, but obviously he has to have at least been in the loop somewhat about what the strategy was. I mean, they have let go of arguably 4 Ring of Honor guys in the last 18 months, including a bunch of other guys that are, veteran, top-notch contributors. They've lost their 2 best wide receivers. They've lost their most experienced linebacker. They've lost the Hall of Fame corner. They lost the Hall of Fame certainly Ring of Honor left tackle and a Ring of Honor borderline Hall of Fame center, and have replaced all of those guys with nothing but what Bill Parcells used to call, kind of quote-unquote hold the fort guys. Guys are going to come in and do their best, but really aren't probably going to be here when we flip this thing and we have a chance to win. So if the coach isn't apprised of all of that, if he's taken by surprise by some of these moves, then I would say that that's a bad sign. But, normally your head coach is going to be in the loop on what the plan is, and, they're paying the price right now for 2 years of John Idzik drafts that basically produced 2 players. So the guts of their roster is just not there. So they have to figure out a way to replace it.
Yeah, and listen, I think everyone, if you're a Jets fan, you're not expecting a very good season. If you're Todd Bowles, you're in a 3rd year of a 4-year deal. To me, I think the guy deserves, knowing what's going to be in front of him this season, knowing that this is not going to be a great year in terms of the win-loss record. And if you think he's a good football coach and you want him there, I think he deserves. I think you should give Todd Bowles an extension here, to be honest with you.
I could see that, and I would say the same. I would say that if they decide, he's got 2 years left on his deal, not 1. He's not a lame duck coach this year. He's got next year on his deal as well. So this could be, hey, let's watch how this season unfolds and talk about a contract extension at the end of next season. You're never going to let him coach on the last year of his deal. Nobody does that. So they're going to have a decision to make at the end of this year. But maybe this is just about the eye test. There's a big difference between a team that goes 2-14 and loses, constantly 35-3, and there's fighting in the locker room, and unnamed defensive players are cutting the knees out in the media of offensive players, or a team that goes 2-14, 3-13, but loses 6 or 7 games by 7 points or less. They've got a top 10 defense. They're in a bunch of games in the 4th quarter, and at the end of the game, you can honestly say, you know what, that team fought their tails off for that coach. They're just not good enough. So, I mean, I think this is more about the eye test than it is about what their win-loss record is at the end of the season. I can't conceive of how you could look at this roster and tell Todd Bowles you have to get to a certain win total to keep your job. That just wouldn't be fair. That would not be an honest assessment of what they're putting on the field and the bullets they're giving this guy to fire. He just doesn't have any. But he's got a pretty good defense. Not a very good defense, got a pretty good defense. He has some guys on defense he's got 2 young safeties that they are very high on. He's got 3 guys on the defensive line. He's got a couple of pass rushers that if they take that step in year 2 and year 3 of their careers like they ought to, the defense should be good enough to at least make them respectable in most of their games, be competitive, be in the third quarter in the game. And if the team's really, still shows cohesion in the last month of a lost season, to me that also says something about the coach.
Bob Wischusen, always a pleasure, man. Thanks for coming on for a few minutes. The play-by-play voice of the New York Jets, and we're the home of the Jets here on 104.5 at Team ESPN Radio. Bob, thanks again, and we'll talk to you once we get cranked up for a training camp in July.
Okay, guys, have a good summer.
Thank you, Bob. You too.